Outrage and anger should be the universal reaction to Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, and there is widespread hatred for Vladimir Putin now, as described in today's New York Times article with the headline, "Hate for Putin's Russia Consumes Ukraine." But outrage and anger and hate are never good guides for strategic thinking. Some of the properly outraged and angry opponents of Putin's war have urged the United States to establish what they call a no-fly zone over Ukraine. A no-fly zone is an imaginary condition in which the United States would be able to prevent anything Russian from entering the airspace of Ukraine. Any Russian plane, any Russian missile. To do that, the United States would have to shoot down Russian planes and somehow intercept Russian missiles in flight. The accurate description of what people mean by a no-fly zone is actually an aerial combat zone. But aerial combat zone sounds like a place where people get killed, including American pilots, and it is. And so the antiseptic, imaginary term, no-fly zone, is used instead. A no-fly zone has never been imposed anywhere in the world in the middle of a hot war with a nuclear-armed military superpower like Russia. The Germans bombed London for over a year before the United States even entered World War II, and the only way we established a no-fly zone anywhere in Europe in World War II was by defeating the German army, which we could not have done at the time without the help of the Russian army, which suffered more losses in World War II than any other army. And so in the Oval Office, in the Situation Room, when President Biden is presented with the choice of watching the Russians attack Ukraine from the air, where they are meeting some resistance now from Ukrainian pilots and Javelin missiles, and trying to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine, everyone in the room knows that that means American pilots shooting down Russian pilots and Russian pilots shooting down American pilots. They just don't know exactly how many pilots from each country will be killed and how quickly they will be killed. And everyone in the White House discussing this knows that that would change a war between Russia and Ukraine into a war between Russia and the United States. And then no one knows what happens after that. But they all do know that Vladimir Putin is proving himself to be the single most unstable Russian commander of nuclear weapons in history. The one thing that no one runs into the Oval Office saying is, we've got to do something. That kind of strategic thinking works on Twitter, but it doesn't work and should not work in a room where presidential decisions are made. And in a world of bad choices, sometimes doing nothing is your least bad choice. Everyone in the Biden administration would no doubt want to send American pilots into battle over Ukraine with Russian pilots if they thought it would work. If they thought American pilots could simply shoot down Russian pilots and then we would have the imaginary no-fly zone over Ukraine and the Russians would no longer be killing people from the air. If the President of the United States and the leaders of NATO countries believed that that would work, they would all be instantly in favor of doing it. And I'm sure they all wish it would work, because then they, too, could indulge that urge to just do something. To govern is to choose, and the choices are never easy. Yesterday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken described the choice President Biden has made.
The President's been very clear about one thing all along as well, which is we're not going to put the United States in direct conflict with Russia, not have American planes flying against Russian planes, or our soldiers on the ground in Ukraine, because for everything we're doing for Ukraine, the President also has a responsibility to not get us into a direct conflict, a direct war with Russia, a nuclear power, and risk a war that expands even beyond Ukraine to Europe. That's clearly not our interest. What we're trying to do is end this war in Ukraine, not start a larger one.